everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be going through every book I read in March. So before we get right into that, there's like a couple of things to mention. Mainly, where have you been? You've missed 2 uploads in a row, and that's because I've had literally 0 time to film. That's probably going to carry on for a while, and so I've made the decision to only upload once a week on a Thursday instead of twice a week on a Monday and a Thursday. That's not to say that there'll never be an upload on Monday. Sometimes you just have a load of video ideas going around your head, and I think that I will continue that even after my exams are over, but I'm not making any promises that there won't be 2 videos, and I'm also making no promises that there will be. And then the second thing is I've kind of been in a bit of a reading slump, kind of. It's really hard to explain because, I mean, I read more books than I usually do. That's all because of Becca's 48-hour Bookoplathon though. So first I'm going to go through some stats. So in March, I read 3,797 pages across 10 books, which is the most I've read so far this year, despite the weird reading mood. And I only listened to 18 hours of audiobooks, which is actually the least amount of hours of listening. I had 1 reread, which was my first reread of the year, and my average rating was a 3.78 stars. So for genres, I read 3 contemporary books, 5 fantasy books, 2 comic/graphic novels, and that's all. I've read 4 adult books, 2 middle grade books, and 4 YA books. So for format, I read 2 audiobooks, I read 2 physical books, I read 5 ebooks, and 1 book I read was a mix of the audiobook and the physical book. Then lastly, for my ratings, 1 book I didn't rate, 1 book I gave 2 stars, and then the other 8 books I gave 4 stars. So I'm going to try and keep actually talking about the books really quick and really like snappy because I've spoken about every single one of these except for 1 book in a reading vlog. So the first book I read this month was Bridge of Souls by Victoria Schwab. This is the 3rd book in the Cassidy Blake trilogy, which is a middle grade series. And it follows Cassidy Blake, who had a near-death experience and now she has the ability to see ghosts. And it is the final book for now in the series, but Victoria Schwab has said that she might come back to it. And I really enjoy this series. This is one that I do have a reading vlog for. It is I reread Bridge of Souls and Chain of Iron. There's a spoiler and a non-spoiler section. So if you want deeper thoughts, go check that out. I really enjoyed everything about this book. I'm really attached to the characters in there. They are just the absolute sweetest. I want to give them a hug. Like, they deserve the world. So I really love the characters. I really like where the story went. And also, I would totally recommend the audiobook. The narrator is absolutely brilliant. I love her voice. And she did a really creepy voice for like the bad guy. So in CAWPILE, that's the system created by G for rating books. That's what I use. I'll leave the video link down below. 9 out of 10 for the characters. I give it 9 out of 10 for the atmosphere. Writing, I gave a 7, and I docked like 2 points off it for the writing. Purely because of the amount of Harry Potter references. I was really hoping she would have cut them out. I know that they were present in the first 2 books, but after everything that happened, I was like, just cut it out. Plot, I gave a 9 out of 10. Intrigue, I gave an 8 out of 10. Logic, I gave an 8. Middle grades, and a lot of YAs usually lack a bit of logic because the parents are just clueless. But I think she dealt with it pretty well. And then enjoyment, I gave a 9. I really enjoyed it. And so that came out as a 4-star. Then the next book I read this month was Chain of Iron by Cassandra Clare. This is the 2nd book in the Last Hours trilogy, which follows the children of the characters in The Infernal Devices. I'm enjoying this, but I've started to realize that Cassandra Clare just isn't an author that wows me anymore. I've gotten this far, I'm not giving up now. So again, this is in the vlog where I discuss Bridge of Souls. I also discuss this, and there's a huge spoilery section at the end. So if you want to know like spoilery thoughts, and I find it really hard to talk about this one because there are some parts of this book that I just absolutely adore with my whole being. There's kind of 2 main couples nearly, I guess, and one has like my favorite moments. They're like 5-star moments. I'm just like squealing over them. And then the rest of the book was like 3 stars. And so that's how it kind of came out as a 4-star. The plot was underwhelming to me. I guessed what was happening. And I just feel like she reuses the same plots over and over and over again. And I'm fed up with it. I gave characters an 8 out of 10. Atmosphere, I gave a 7. Writing, I gave a 7. Plot, I gave a 7. Intrigue, I gave an 8. Logic, I gave a 7. She changed stuff. Like, she was changing lore. This is like the 15th book don't do that. And then enjoyment, I gave an 8 again, and that came out as a 4-star. Okay, so the next book I then read this month was The City of Brass by S.A. Chakraborty. I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars as well. This is the only book that I don't have a reading vlog for, and this book took me so long to read. I've been saying that, oh, I'm getting way more into adult fantasy, which is true, and I mean, I did enjoy this, but for some reason, I cannot pick up an adult fantasy right now unless I'm listening to it on audiobook. Like, it's not happening. This takes place in 18th century Cairo, and we follow a con woman called Nari, and she uses her abilities. She can sense if someone is sick to con them out of more money. And one day she accidentally summons a Jinn warrior, and she gets taken to the City of Brass. So characters, I gave an 8. We have 2 points of views in here. So we have Nari and we have Ali. At first, I was far more interested in Nari's point of view. I didn't really care about our other point of view. But as the book progressed, I ended up really loving both of the points of views and really enjoying both of their characters because they give 2 very different perspectives on this world. The atmosphere, I give an 8. I think this book, it had a very sneaky kind of a feel to it. Like, there was a lot of like manipulation, and all of the politics was very complicated, and you were trying to figure out who is the good guy. We were getting so many different kind of conflicting points of views from, like, people with Nari were saying, no, this is bad, these were the bad guys. And then in Ali's perspective, we're getting told, oh no, these guys were the bad guys. And so it's all very complicated and a really enjoyable world building. I do actually like how the world building is done here. I know it's actually more of a YA trope, even though this is technically adult fantasy, but has kind of crossover appeal, I guess. It does have the very like YA trope of, oh, she finds out she has secret powers that she never knew about and she's very important. But I think it works because I think it's one of the best ways to get world building done, because you are learning about this world as our main character is learning about this world, and it didn't feel very rushed, it didn't feel very info dumpy. We gradually learned about it. Writing, I give an 8, even from like the very first page. Like, okay, it took me a while to get through this book, but I remember just starting it and being like, yeah, I really like this writing style. But I will say, the iconic line, "He let out a breath he didn't know he was holding," was included in this book. Plot, I give a 9. As I said earlier, I did really enjoy the politics and the scheming, and I'm very interested to see how this will develop in future books, because some stuff happened near the end of this book and I'm so interested. And I know that there's a bit of a time jump, I think, between the first and second book, so as I said, super intrigued to see how this will play out. Intrigue, I gave a 7. It took me over a month to read this book, and once I was reading it, I was able to read it, but I just had no motivation to pick this book up, and I don't know what it was, because I was enjoying it while I was reading it, but I didn't want to pick it up. And so in the end, I put on the audiobook that was on SCRIBD, and I was able to power through then, and it took me like 3 days to read the rest of it. I had to kind of bring intrigue down for that because it took me so long to read it. Logic, I give an 8. Enjoyment, I also gave an 8. I do think that it taking so long for me to read this book did impact my enjoyment of it. I think I would have much preferred it if I had read it quickly, but I didn't. So yeah, I'm very intrigued about the sequels. I have a feeling I'm going to love the sequels. So now we're on to Bookoplathon. So again, I have a reading vlog that I discuss there's 5 books that I read for Bookoplathon, but 4 of them I discussed. The other one was for another video, which I'll get to in a minute. So the first book I read for the 48-hour Bookoplathon was The Rebel Army, which is the final volume, I think, of the Shades of Magic series, though it does end with definitely the possibility for more, and I would like more. I'm always up for more Shades of Magic content, please. I find it really hard to discuss comics because I am not an artistic person, so I can't be like, yes, this art style was brilliant. I mean, I liked it. It's not a huge book where you can like pick apart every detail, so it's very hard for me to discuss, but I did give it 4 stars in the end. It definitely makes Maxim, who is the father in the Shades of Magic trilogy, because these are prequels, it definitely makes him a far more interesting character, and it makes him more complicated because he's kind of an ass in the series, and then like in A Conjuring of Light you learn there might be more to him, and then we get a prequel series which shows that there is a lot more of him. I gave characters an 8. Atmosphere I changed because it's still an 8. I changed art style, so I gave that an 8 because I like it. It's not my favorite thing I've ever seen drawn, but I like it. Writing, I gave a 7. Plot, I gave a 7. Intrigue, I gave a 7. Logic, I gave a 7. And then enjoyment, I gave a 7. So It was a 4-star. A lower 4-star, but it was a 4-star. The next book I read was The Wicker King by Kate Ancrum. Again, I discussed this in the vlog. I think I originally said I was giving it a 4-star. When I put it through CAWPILE, it actually came out as a pretty high 3-star, which I do actually kind of agree with more because I've forgotten basically everything that happens in that book. It follows two friends who have this like very toxic friendship, and one of them is having hallucinations and the other one decides the best way to help him is to go along with these hallucinations. I can see why so many people enjoy it, but I personally didn't. It wasn't a story for me. I also had heard that like the ending makes you go, what? That's what's happening? And I was like, and I got to the ending, I was like, yeah, of course that's what was happening. So characters, I give a 7. They were interesting characters. They had a lot of depth to them, and I can see why so many people love them, but they weren't anything extraordinary to me. Atmosphere, I give a 6. Writing, I gave a 7. A plot, I gave a 6. Because, like, was there a plot? Like, it was just like, yeah, I don't know. It was a lot more focused on characters than a specific plot. Intrigue, I give a 9 because I was very intrigued. I wanted to know what was happening, and I wanted to know what everyone was talking about how shocking the ending was. I was disappointed by it, but I was intrigued. Logic, I gave a 6, and then enjoyment, I gave a 7. So that was a 3-star, which also I'm pretty sure it said on my other spreadsheet that I gave all 4 stars. So my monthly stats were wrong. So my average rating was a 3.67. So then the next book I read for Bookoplathon was Spinning by Tilly Walden, but I'll come back to that in a minute. The next book I read for Becca's 48-hour Bookoplathon again was Truthwitch by Susan Dennard, which I love this book so freaking much. I mean, I love this series. They're there. And this is a reread for me. It was my first reread for the year, and it made me so happy to be back in with these characters. And I gave it a 4 stars, but I was really considering giving it a 5 because I just love them so much. But I was like, no, actually, like, put your ratings through CAWPILE and let that decide for you. So it was a really high 4-star because I can acknowledge that it's not the strongest book in the series and the writing isn't the best, but it gets so much better. And also I took notes while I was reading this, but I realized literally every note I made was a spoiler for the next books in the series because it was just me screaming about things that haven't happened yet. So those were very bad notes that I took. So this I read because, well, I was planning a reread anyway, and I have a Discord server where I talk about these. But also JD Ray Reads is hosting Which Lands Along, and I wanted to participate with that, so it was just handy dandy that they overlapped. I keep seeing everyone talking about these, and it just makes me want to reread it again. And I'm like, no, you don't need to reread it again. And this series, it gets so much better on reread. I gave it a 4 star the first time, and I gave it a 4 star this time, but it was a much higher 4 star, I would say this time. It was like a middle 4 star the first time I read it, but it was like a super high 4 star this time. And I think it's just because I love the characters. I already know who they are, and I already know what is happening, whereas you're kind of just, like, I guess, shoved into the action with this. I've seen a lot of people saying that, like, it's really confusing, the politics and stuff, and I don't think so. I disagree. Even on the first time, I understood what was happening, but I've heard a lot of people saying they were confused by what was happening, so I guess I'm the odd one out here. And it does become more clear upon reread, like, you 100% understand it, but I thought I understood the first time as well. So. CAWPILE ratings, I gave characters a 10 because I love them. I think that might be the first time I've given characters a 10 this year. Atmosphere, I give an 8. I find the world really interesting and all the witcheries. Writing, I give a 7. So I will admit that her writing isn't the best here. I think it's still good. I think it is solid, and it gets better and better with each book, along with everything else. It gets so much better. Plot, I give an 8. I really enjoy it. I do enjoy really fast-paced, action-packed things anyway. So like this starting off with just like complete chaos, like that's good for me. So, but I know a lot of people don't like to be thrown straight into things. So that's probably another reason why some people don't love this as much as I do. Intrigue, I give a 9. Even though I had read this before, I did not want to put it down. I was having so much fun with it. I just wanted to keep reading. Logic, I gave a 9. And then enjoyment, I gave a 10. I may have teared up at a particular scene in here, which means absolutely nothing to anyone reading it for the first time, but I was like, I know what happens and I love ye. Remember when I said I was only going to talk quickly about these books? I can't either. The next book that I read this month was The Willful Princess and the Piebald Prince by Robin Hobb. This is a short novella in the realm of the Elderlings, and oh my god, this was so good. I mean, I thought I would like it, but I didn't think it would be this good. I mean, you look at her books, they're this big, and they're amazing being this big, and then she has a short story, which I don't actually have it physically, but it's like, I don't know, I think I've seen copies of it, and it's like this size compared to this. It's like maybe like this much of this book, and it was still amazing. For such a short book, she crammed it with information, and I have a feeling that there will be consequences for what happens in that book in the next series that I'm reading. I mean, we've already had mentions of like the Piebald Prince in the first trilogy, in the Farseer trilogy, and I think from what I know about the next trilogy that I'm going into, which is the Tawny Man trilogy, I have a feeling this is going to have a big part to play, and I'm so excited to see how it connects into it. I was just absolutely amazed by Robin Hobb's ability to tell a full story in such a short amount of time. I mean, I don't think she left any details out, and it was told from the perspective of a like storyteller. So it was like being told a story, and so I think the audiobook worked really well for that. So characters, I gave an 8. Atmosphere, I gave an 8. Writing, I gave a 9. I mean, I was just blown away by how well written it was for such a short book. Plot, I gave an 8. Intrigue, I gave a 7. Logic, I gave an 8. And then enjoyment, I also gave an 8. And so then onto my last vlog of the month, and that was I read figure skating books, which unfortunately is like not doing great. So if you want to go watch that. So the first book I read for this, and I also read it for Bookoplathon, was Spinning by Tilly Walden. This is a graphic memoir about her growing up participating in synchronized skating and having to take figure skating lessons and all of this. And I did enjoy it. I didn't give it a rating, but I would probably say it would be probably a 4-star. I think it has some absolutely beautiful illustrations. I really did like them. I kind of like that kind of like more cutesy style, I guess. It was like captivating and emotional story about her teenage years and all of the stuff she went through. She touched a lot on like the different parts of her life and how she kind of tried to split herself into all of these different people. And so she was trying to hide some parts of herself from other, like when she came out. And she told so many people in her life, but she never told the people she figure skated with. But I do think my biggest problem with this is she touched on a lot of like hard topics, but she then never developed them. She only mentioned them and then like moved on, which I guess I can't really criticize because it's her life. If she doesn't want to discuss them, that is okay. But it just felt like really kind of disjointed because she would like just mention it and then you'd be like, what? And then just moved on to the next thing. Then the next book I read was From Lukov with Love, and I did not like this book. I will say it wasn't a 1-star, which if you know, I usually, if I do any secret reading vlogs, there's usually a 1-star book, and that didn't happen this time. There was a 2-star book, but like, I call that a success. I really didn't like it. 3 for characters, 2 for atmosphere, 4 for writing, 3 for plot, 2 for intrigue, 3 for logic, 3 for enjoyment. And that came out as a 2-star. I mean, I would like you to have a discussion with whoever told me this was a romance book, because you were wrong. You were wrong, and I had my expectations for a cute, fluffy romance. Something like, you know, like cutting edge. I could see what it was trying to do. It was trying to be like hard-hitting sports contemporary with like romance at the side. And no, I wanted romance at the front and then like slightly sport. So I just felt really disappointed and really underwhelmed by it, and there were so many figure skating mistakes. I mean, that's my thing, is I would have been able to overlook figure skating mistakes and like her having 0 research done if it was just like a cute fluffy romance and like the sport was just at the side and it was mainly about this romance and them getting together. But no, it was like mainly about the sport, and then like at like 80% through, then they're like, I love you, and I'm like, that came out of nowhere. Like at the start of the book, she's trying to land a triple salcho and she can't do it, and then like literally like not even like a month later she's landing quad toes, and I'm like, what the hell, that's not possible. And then my other biggest complaint with that was there was some really horrible weight jokes, and I mean, if you know like literally anything about figure skating, fortunately eating disorders run rampant in like the figure skating world, and so I was just so grossed out by that. And then the last book I read in the month was Anna on the Edge by AJ Sass, and this is a story about a non-binary skater as she is trying to come to terms with her identity. Also, in the book, Anna does continue to use she, her pronouns, so it's kind of like implied that she's going to think about what her pronouns are, but just so you know, I'm not misgendering the character. So I gave characters an 8, atmosphere a 7, writing an 8, plot a 7, intrigue a 7, logic an 8, and enjoyment a 7. And so that was a 4-star. I think it was a very cute story, and it is going to be so important for young readers to read because I think it is a very beautiful story. But I did find it a little boring at points. I thought it was kind of like dragged on a little at some points in the story. It wouldn't have bothered me anyway, but the figure skating information here was actually far more accurate than in From the Cove with Love, probably because AJ Sass has done figure skating. But I also wouldn't have actually bothered me if the figure skating information wasn't correct, because of what the message of the story was. The story wasn't actually about figure skating, it was just using figure skating as a way to explore gender identity. And I think that was really well chosen because of how strict the gender rules are in figure skating. So I think that was a really good decision to make. In figure skating, you know, the girls wear dresses, the boys wear pants, and the girls dance to little soft music and all of this stuff. And so I think it was a really good way to explore that. But I mean, the figure skating information was good anyway. So that brings me to the end of this. So thank you guys so much for watching. I do hope you enjoyed. If you did, subscribe, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye!